There's something Carl Jung said that almost nobody talks about. Something so quietly devastating that when you finally understand it, you won't be able to unsee it. He said that some people are not born empaths. They are made into them, and the thing that made them was being told over and over as a child that their needs didn't matter. Let me ask you something. Do you feel things deeply? Like sometimes so deeply that you wonder if something is wrong with you? You pick up on tension in a room before anyone says a word. You feel other people's sadness, even when they're smiling. You carry guilt like it's a second skin. And somewhere along the way, someone probably told you, you're too sensitive. You care too much. Why do you always overthink everything? And maybe, just maybe, you started to believe them. So you learned to swallow your feelings. To smile when you were breaking. To say, I'm fine, when you were absolutely not fine. To put everyone else's needs in front of yours. And you told yourself that was just who you are. A giver, a healer, a helper. But here's the thing nobody ever told you. That pattern, that beautiful, exhausting pattern, didn't start with kindness. It started with survival. And Carl Jung saw it coming. Long before the word empath ever existed, Carl Jung was one of the most brilliant minds in the history of psychology. He studied the human soul, not just the mind, but the soul. He believed that we are all shaped by things we don't fully remember. Wounds we carry without knowing why. Patterns we repeat without understanding where they came from. And one of his most important ideas was this concept he called the shadow. The shadow is the part of yourself you were told to hide. The anger you weren't allowed to feel. The needs you were shamed for having. The version of you that wanted things and was punished for it. So what do you do with that shadow? You bury it. You pack it deep, deep down. And over time, you become someone who doesn't have needs. Someone who only exists in relation to other people's needs. Jung called this process something fascinating. He said that some children, especially sensitive ones, are not allowed to develop a self. They are not allowed to be selfish. Not in the greedy sense. In the healthy sense. The I matter too sense. The my feelings are real sense. The I am allowed to take up space sense, and those children grow up. They become adults. Beautiful, compassionate, exhausted adults. Who spend their entire lives pouring into everyone else. Because somewhere inside them, a very small child still believes. That love must be earned. Here's a truth that might sting a little. You are not simply born feeling everything so deeply. Yes, some people are naturally more sensitive. But that sensitivity was amplified, sharpened like a blade, by an environment that required you to be hyperaware. Think about it. When you grow up in a home where a parent's mood controls the atmosphere, where one wrong word could set everything off, where you had to read the room just to feel safe, you become an expert at emotions. Not because it's your gift, but because it was your survival strategy. Jung described this as the psyche's way of adapting. A child who cannot control their environment learns to predict it instead. You became fluent in emotions. Because emotional fluency was the only armor you had, and now, you're an adult. The danger isn't there anymore. But the radar never got turned off. You still scan every room. Still read every face. Still carry tension that doesn't even belong to you. And you wonder why you're always so tired. That's why. This one is hard to hear. But it's important. Empaths and narcissists find each other. Not by accident. Not by bad luck. But because they are mirror images of the same wound. The empath learned, I must abandon myself to keep others close. The narcissist learned, I must control others to feel safe. One gives endlessly. One takes endlessly. And for a while, especially at the beginning, it feels like love. Because the narcissist is brilliant at making you feel seen. They study you. They reflect you. They say all the right things. They feel like home, and that's because, for the empath, this dynamic is familiar. You've been here before. Not with them, but with someone who came before them. Someone who also needed you to be small. Someone who also needed you to have no needs. Jung called this repetition compulsion. We don't repeat painful patterns because we enjoy pain. We repeat them because we are unconsciously trying to fix them. To finally get it right. To finally be enough. But you were always enough. The problem was never you. Do you ever say sorry, without knowing exactly why? Do you feel responsible for how other people feel? Like if someone is upset in your presence. It must be something you did. This is one of the most painful gifts of the trained empath. You absorbed guilt like oxygen. Because in your earliest years, guilt was useful. If you felt guilty, you could fix things. If you could fix things, you could restore peace. If you could restore peace, you were safe. So guilt became a reflex. A way of maintaining control in a world that felt unpredictable. But guilt is only healthy when it's connected to something you actually did wrong. The guilt you carry? A lot of it isn't yours. It was handed to you. By people who needed someone to blame. By people who couldn't face their own shadows. So they placed theirs inside you. And because you were so open, so receptive, so willing to take it, you held it. For years. Maybe decades. It's not yours. You are allowed to put it down. Now here's something people never talk about. Because it's uncomfortable. Empaths are good people. Genuinely. But being good doesn't mean you have no shadow. In fact, the deeper you bury your shadow, the more power it has over you. Jung warned about this. He said the most dangerous people are not those who embrace their darkness. They are those who refuse to acknowledge it. What lives in the empath's shadow? Anger. Real, deep, righteous anger. The anger of someone who was never allowed to say, that hurt me. That wasn't okay. I deserved better than that. Also, resentment. The slow, quiet resentment of someone who has given. And given. And given. And never received. And selfishness. Not toxic selfishness. But the buried, legitimate need to be first sometimes. To choose yourself sometimes. When you don't acknowledge that shadow, it leaks out in other ways. In passive aggression. In quiet withdrawal. In choosing people who hurt you. Because some part of you still believes that's what you deserve. Pause. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Your shadow is not your enemy. It's the part of you waiting to be integrated. Let me describe something. Someone asks you for a favor. You don't want to do it. You're exhausted. You're overwhelmed. Every fiber of your being wants to say no. And then you say yes. And then you hate yourself for it. Why? Because somewhere along the way, your boundaries were treated as aggression. Your no was met with punishment, with withdrawal of love, with guilt, with shame. So your nervous system learned. Boundaries echo danger. Boundaries abandonment. Boundaries alcohol lose you, and so you stopped having them. Not because you don't deserve them, but because the cost of having them once felt too high. The tragedy is that by abandoning your boundaries, you don't prevent abandonment. You just invite people who will always push past the line you keep erasing. A boundary is not a wall. It's not a rejection. It's a translation. It says, this is who I am. This is what I need. This is where I end, and you begin. The right people will not leave when you find your voice. They'll love you more for it. Here's something nobody prepares you for. When you start healing, it's disorienting. Because you've spent so long being the version of yourself that everyone needed, that you don't know who you are without it. You don't know what you like, because you always deferred to others. You don't know what you need, because you always prioritized others. You don't know what makes you happy, because happiness always felt conditional. And when you start saying no, when you start choosing yourself, some people won't understand it. Some will call it selfishness. Some will pull away. And your nervous system will scream at you that you're doing something wrong. But you're not. You're doing something ancient. Something Jung called individuation. The process of becoming who you were always meant to be, before the world told you who you had to be. It's not a betrayal of the people you love. It's a return to the self you were never allowed to be. This one matters. Every time someone told you that you were too sensitive, too emotional, too intense, too much, they were not giving you information about yourself. They were giving you information about their capacity. Some people cannot hold depth. Some people are frightened by feeling. Some people need you small because your fullness makes them feel empty. That is not your problem to fix. Jung believed the goal of a human life was not to be liked. It was to be whole. Whole means all of it. The softness and the fire. The compassion and the boundaries. The giving and the receiving. The light and the shadow. You were never too much. You were just surrounded by people who had too little. And you deserved better. You still do.